the most overpaid CEOs, and can this help us to determine what stocks to buy and what stocks to avoid? Let's go ahead and break it down. There is a nonprofit called As You Sow that compiled the top 100 most overpaid CEOs. Today I'm just going to cover 10. What were the things they looked at? First, they looked at shareholder return. How much do we make as shareholders? Because that's what they're here for, right? To make shareholders money. It's the whole point of the stock market, is to make me and you money because we own the company, if you obviously own the shares. They also looked at the median gap between what the CEO is making and the median employee. That's a person right there in the middle. And they looked at the votes, okay? The institutions, that's the BlackRocks, the Vanguards, the Fidelities, these major stock buyers, and people like me and you. How many of us, what percent, voted no against their compensation package, which I thought was shady but fun. So I'm going to start at 10 and work our way up. I'm also going to tell you how well the stock did and what I think about the stock too. Let's start at, I'm supposed to start at 10, I'm going to start at 11 because I did not expect this to be here. Remember I talked about Prologis and how Prologis was one of the stocks in my son's portfolio? They came in at 11. The CEO is Hamid Moghadam. Sorry if I mispronounced it. Getting paid $48 million. And trust me, these numbers get a lot bigger. Prologis, though, is just up 10% in the last 6 months and up 6% over last year. Now, for my son, who bought it 6 years ago, he's fine. It's probably going to be a long-term hold. It also pays a solid dividend. But that's not a stock I would buy today. Not a stock at all by today. And he's overpaid. 10% is not great in an environment like right now. Okay, that's underperforming in an environment right now. As we go up the list, you'll see why. 68% of institutional investors said no, we don't want to pay this man that much. Or this person, I don't know if it's a man or a woman. Also, individual investors, 72% said no. I don't know how both of these are, both categories here say no, you still get paid that amount of money. I don't know. The pay differential, the gap here is 403 to 1. Okay, 403 to 1, meaning the median employee is getting paid $119,000, which, hey, that's pretty solid, right? And this person, the CEO, is getting paid $48 million. You know, for what you're paying and what the stock is returning, yeah, that's not a stock I would buy right now. All right, next here is Charter Communications. Now, they are at least in my region, y'all let me know, I do not like Charter as a customer. The minute I moved into my house, they said, hey, Charter's your provider. I said, no, cut it off. I'd rather go without internet before I give Charter any of my money, okay? Let me know if I'm in the minority for that. I had to switch immediately. But Thomas Rutledge is the CEO. He's getting paid $39 million. The stock, though, oh, I'm going to say that for last. Okay, he's getting paid $39 million. 47% of institutional investors said no. 29% of us, regular investors, said no. His compensation, that gap is 707. The median employee gets paid right around $55,000 a year. Now, this got to be, I would assume this is the worst, but it's only number 10 here on the list. The stock lost 34% in the last 6 months and lost 16% in the last year. This got to be the worst job I've ever seen. Okay, now, worst job I've ever seen doing this list. Okay, so far, I'm only at 10, so we'll see how things unfold as we go. But ain't no way I'm going to be with a stock that's losing 34% in an environment like this. Ridiculous. You got to go. You got to go. You need to be in the pile with the Boeing CEO. Throwing it out there. All right, next is Simon Property Group. This is a stock we talked about years ago. Simon Property Group, his name is David Simon. That tells us something, right? So $35 million is his pay. 88% of institutional investors said no, and 89% of stockholders said no. So I really want to know what is going on in Simon Property Group and why don't they like this man? The pay gap here is 538 to 1. The average employee, the median employee, I keep saying average, they're not the same. I was an old math teacher. So no, they're definitely not the same. But $66,000 is what the median employee is currently getting paid. Simon Property Group, though, is up 34% in the last 6 months and up 43% over last year. I don't know if 80% would be voting against that. He may have done something I don't know about, so there's that. But I think those returns are pretty solid here. Next here is Ingersoll Rand. This is a stock we have talked about before. The stock symbol is IR. The CEO is Vicente Renal, perhaps. My apologies if I pronounced any of these names wrong. $54 million is what this person is getting paid. 42% of institutional investors said no, and about 41% of stockholders said no. The pay gap here, 837 to 1. Getting paid, the average employee rather is getting paid about $65,000. Now here's where things get real interesting for me. Here at number 7, Netflix. Okay, now if you asked me 2 years ago what I felt about Netflix, this would be a different story. CEO, co-CEOs rather, Reed Hastings and Ted Sarandos. I assume that's $101 million for each, because that's the salary that they have here. That's my assumption. I don't know if they're splitting it evenly or not. 71% of institutional investors said no, which is wild to me. 71% seems rather high for a company that gained 63% in the last 6 months and 92% over the last year. That's a good stock, y'all. I don't see why they would be voting against it, unless it's something, again, I'm not paying attention to. The average investor, 71%, voted against CEO pay as well. 464 is the pay gap here. The median employee at Netflix gets paid $218,000 a year. Whew. 218 median salary there at Netflix. I will say this though, perhaps as I'm putting myself in these shoes, right, as we were splitting this up before we move to number 6, when I do get the emails about whether or not I should vote for a CEO's compensation, now that I'm thinking about it, I do usually vote no, because if you're getting paid anywhere around $100 million a year, you fine. Okay, I don't need to pay you more. So perhaps that's why some of these numbers are as high as they are, and obviously that money can be used in better places for employees, for investments, and everything in between. Okay, next here is American Express, not a company I would have assumed that was going to be on here. Steven Sequeira is the CEO, getting paid $48 million. 59% of institutional investors said no, just 45% of average investors said no. 972 though is the pay gap, as the average employee at American Express gets paid right under $50,000 at $49,409 at median, or is the median pay there. I think I said average again. I apologize. Moving up to number 5, we have Western Digital. David Keller? I don't know. 32 million is what this person is getting paid. 78% of institutional investors said no, we're not paying you that amount, and 87% of shareholders said the same. The gap here, and I got my laptop, 3,332 is the pay gap here. I see why they, man, look at this. The median pay for someone at Western Digital is $9,644. That means half are getting paid more than that, and half are getting paid under $9,644. That's a problem. That's overpay. Now, I will say the stock has done well. 52% in the last 6 months, 90% over last year. But something's off. That average pay is real off for your median employee to get paid less than $10,000 a year. That's something I would have to, we're going to do a separate video on that, because some ain't right there. All right, next here is American International Group, AIG, the insurance company. For those that don't know, if you're hearing a sound, that's from my laptop. My fan is blowing. Don't know why. Anyway, Peter Zaffino gets paid $75 million. 60% of institutional investors said no, and 67% of shareholders said no as well. The pay gap, $894, and the median salary there is about $84,000. AIG though, as a company, 24% gained in the last 6 months and up 60% over last year. Y'all know how I feel about insurance companies. I think they're back in style. I think it's an okay stock, but perhaps he's, top 4 in terms of overpayment. Let me go ahead and put this on mute while I'm doing this video. Okay, I'm not editing it out. Okay, we just gonna go with it. All right, next here is Alphabet. Sundar Pichai. I can't believe he's even on this list. Okay, $225 million is his salary, and 225.9 and some other numbers behind that. That's crazy. 67% of institutional investors said no. Just 24% of shareholders said no. Interesting. There's a big gap there. 808 is the pay gap, but the median employee at Alphabet gets paid $279,000. $279,000 just at median, which that's pretty good. It's pretty good. Okay, the stock though, depends on how you want to look at it. Up just 15% in the last 6 months, up 44% over the last year. And 15%, again, in this era, you can get paid a whole lot more than that. 44% I do think is quite solid. It's a long-term hold for me. I'm not buying any new shares of Alphabet, but I'm definitely holding on to the shares that I do have. Next, going up to number 2 is Safra Catz of Oracle, getting paid $138 million, while 66% of institutional investors said no, and just 33% of shareholders said no. Interesting gap there, but I do think I see what the problem is. The pay gap here is 1,842 to 1. Okay, 1,842 to 1. The median employee is getting paid about 75,000, and this person is getting paid 138 million. The stock, though, not overly impressive. Very similar to where Google was at 16% in the last 6 months and 42% over last year. I would argue it's a tad bit worse than where Google is. Again, that's normally a solid B tier company. We did our tiers of Dow Jones stocks, in which Alphabet, I believe, was one of those. So I have to go back and check. But yeah, you can do better, but I'm certainly not going to sell and be upset about those types of returns. What is number 1 on the list? Okay, what is number 1 on the list? Before I get to it, make sure that you sign up for my free guide on how you can start investing in just 20 minutes. It is a free PDF. It walks you through the entire investing process. I'll make sure that link is on the screen and in the bio below. All right, number 1 is Live Nation. Live Nation Entertainment CEO is Michael Rapino, coming in at $139 million is the pay here. 81% of institutional investors said no, 54% of shareholders said no, people like me and you. I think the biggest reason as to why this was someone who was overpaid is the 5,414 to 1 gap. Like, just really, you're getting paid more than 5,000 times more than the median employee. CEOs getting paid more is fine, okay, but 5,000 times? 5,414 times more than the median employee? That is wild. $25,673 is the median salary at Live Nation. That's not going to cut it. Especially with inflation, that's absolutely not going to cut it. The stock, though, is up 32% in the last 6 months and up 56% over the last year. From a stock perspective, yes, I probably would buy. Looking at this pay gap, though, that's wild. Okay, 5,000 more than 5,000 more than the median employee. So that's the list. I will say, of the stocks, if I'm just looking at return only, here are the stocks I would consider adding to my watch list and consider, seeing whether or not I want to own them. Netflix is obviously going to be on that list. I would add Live Nation. I don't know how I feel about Live Nation, but I'll have it there. Western Digital, I would have it on the list. AIG, I would have it on the list. Ingersoll Rand, we have talked about before, so that's obviously going to be on the list. I'm super curious as to what is going on at Western Digital, and very curious as what is going on with Live Nation. I need more info. So that is what I would do with those particular stocks. If you're looking for companies that aren't overpaid in terms of CEOs, but are paying you as an investor, then you want to make sure you check out this video here.